Dzogchen Today podcast. Welcome to Dzogchen Today's podcast. This series of What is Dzogchen dives into the foundation of Dzogchen and presents the richness of its tradition, its history, lineage, path, fruition, and much more.
Hello, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us. I am Vincent, and I'm gonna be your host today. Since last time, we are deepening one of the central triptychs of the Dzogchen, namely the base, path, and fruition. Last time, we talked about the base, ground of Dzogchen, and if you miss it, I recommend you to go listen it online. Today, in this sixth episode of What is Dzogchen, we are going to discuss the topic of the path. And to find out more about it, I am very pleased to welcome Mila Khyentse Rinpoche.
Hello.
Hello. And Damien Bron.
Hello.
Hello. So Mila Khyentse, you are a trained scholar, consultant, and teacher of Dzogchen. And you've been traditionally trained in the Himalayas and in Europe. And you are now a lineage holder.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
That's right.
Damien Bron, you are an art teacher, an artist, and an author. And you also teach Buddhism in different French-speaking countries.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having us.
Very happy to be here.
It's a pleasure. So let's talk about Dzogchen,
Yes.
and more precisely about the path of Dzogchen. And first of all, I would like to ask you, what is meant by path in Dzogchen? And when we think about a path, we think about a beginning and a end. So where does this path begin, and where does this path go? And is there a duration to walk this path?
Okay.
Mila Khyentse, do you have an idea?
Yeah, just a slight idea, maybe a light idea even. Okay, when we talk about path in the Dzogchen tradition, it's the way we will just practice. We will go to the result of the great perfection, which is the base. So the path in the Dzogchen tradition is twofold. If you have the capacity, which is not, which is not coming from your actual effort, but from your past action in your previous lives, for example, then you are just, we are just collecting the fruit in this existence. And then you can walk the path of the primordial ground, which means that it's a path directly connected to the primordial nature of the mind. As we saw in the first episode of this triptych, the base is the primordial ground of the reality of the mind, and all the reality. But you have two ways to walk this base and to reach again this base. So the first one is the primordial one. And the second one is the gradual one, which means a path that you take time, and you can have several steps going to the result. So this path, we say, it's the path of phenomena. You take phenomena as the path. You take the manifestation of your own mind. You take the manifestation of the reality. And then slowly, step by step, you will reach the natural primordial ground of all these manifestations. Which means that you are not reaching directly the primordial ground. You are discovering it step by step in a really gradual way, because we have also to get acquainted. You need to know what the primordial ground, what the real basis of our reality is, because we don't know it. We forgot about it. And then, as it's so tremendously powerful, grounded, which is the ground of all, in fact, we need time, and we need really to build our view and to build our strength to be able to recognize it and to face it directly. So this gradual path is meant to reach in a slower way the primordial base. And the first one, the primordial path, is directly envisioning the primordial base at once. So it's called the path of the Chikcharwa in Tibetan. Chikcharwa means the one who reach the result at once.
Thank you, excuse me. Thank you, Milakin Rinpoche. Damien Boron, would you like to add something about this?
Yes, the main thing has been said, but what I can add is there is a paradoxal nature of the path in Dzogchen, meaning that everything is already there, everything is already primarily pure, there is nothing to change about that. But the point is more to recognize that. That's where there is the necessity of a path. There is a path because we've been deluded and we missed the recognition of the ground for what it is. So that's very particular and very, you can say, non-dual. It's not that because of your effort, like doing some gym, that you achieve something. It's more that you come to realize what is primarily forever and yes, what is present in every moment. That's something that's interesting, I guess, in this perspective of Dzogchen.
Thank you. And to sum up the idea, can we say that the path, it's a way to reach our own nature, the primordial ground?
Oh, we can say that.
And there is maybe two ways, Chikcharwa, in one bound, and a gradual one.
Yes.
And about this gradual one, how can we do? How to walk this path? We often said maybe learning, reflection, and meditation. And what does this mean, according to you? Milakin Rinpoche, please.
This threefold aspect of the path is really traditional in the Great Perfection, and it's really logical as well, because we cannot walk a path that we don't know. First of all, where to walk to, and also how to walk on this path. So the first point is studying the way we can walk this path. Studying means primordially in the Great Perfection, determining what is the ground of the reality, the primordial reality, and which is the manifestation of this reality, which is the manifestations of the phenomena. So we determine by studying the view of the Great Perfection. And the view of the Great Perfection will build our reflection, because we have to integrate for ourselves this view. What is the twofold view of the reality of the Great Perfection for me, in my experience, in all my practice, in all my daily life experiences, into my relationship with others, into the way I can define the world, etc., etc. So this part, the reflection, is and it's an obligation, is based onto the studies, and the study is listening. Usually it's listening. You can say also reading books, but listening to the teachings of the Great Perfection, and then you integrate for yourself these studies, this definition of the Great Perfection, and then you put them into practice. It means that I catched, I grasped what great perfection is, but I have to make sure it's that. It's the thing I determined. And the main tool in the great perfection to check it out, to make great perfection really clear for me, is by meditating. So meditation is the third step. And this step is to check how I integrated the great perfection and to go beyond all the definition I have, because now I have the grounds of knowledge and the practical mean to reach the real great perfection. And usually meditation leads to one thing which is really important onto the path, is the introduction of the nature of the mind, the introduction of the primordial nature of the mind. And this is the main foundation, the main ground for all the ultimate path, which is the primordial base path for me, and it will lead to the result of the great perfection, which is the great perfection of all the reality.
Thank you, Mila Kinsella-Rinpoche. Damien Bron, are you agree with this definition of the three-part path?
Yes, yes, I agree. And we can also say that something like a circle, like a virtuous circle, meaning after meditation, when you come back to study and reflection, it's a deeper study and reflection, because the word of the teaching you've been studied and you reflected upon are living thing. That's not abstract. That's something that you went into through meditation. So that's a process of going deeper and deeper and closer to direct perception of the true nature of reality. So that's very powerful process. It's simple in a sense, simple to say. It's very deep when you do it actually. And that's what everyone which is following this path can feel and experience.
Thank you, Damien Bron. So we can say that we have a path in three parts: studying, reflection, and meditation. And about this last point, the meditation one, from a practical point of view, are there any steps in the meditation? Are there any steps? And if there are, what are they? Damien Bron?
Yes. Commonly, it is said that there is three main steps, which are preliminary, the principal practice, and practice of achievement. So the preliminary, it depends on every lineage at his own way of doing it. Is a way to prepare the principal practice, which is the presentation to the nature of mind, moksha in Tibetan, which is really the man, because that's where everything is happening. It's a way to go directly to this recognition. And then there is the practice of achievement, which has when the moksha has been done, you achieve it completely. It's not something that you saw at one moment. It's something that you completely realize. We can say that very quickly. After maybe Rinpoche, you want to go into that?
Okay, I can do it. When you talk about preliminaries, usually it's in the great perfection. It means the really grounds, the ground of the path. So there is a warning in it also. As we say, preliminaries are not basics. in terms of, it's not interesting, it's so basic, it's boring, I prefer to practice the main practice. But actually, the preliminary practices determine the main practice. It means without the preliminary practices, we cannot realize the true nature of the reality, the real nature of our mind. So the preliminary practices are primordial practices in the Dzogchen tradition. And as when we say the path leads to the results, which is the base of the great perfection, actually we say also that the preliminary practices are the base, are equal to the base. So it's the primordial nature preliminary practices. So this point is so crucial, especially for us in the West, because as we have a different set of mind, we think that what is at the beginning is not really so important. The achievement, the end of the path is important, but it's completely not true for the great perfection in terms of path. The primordial ground is the preliminary practice. And on top of that, the main practice, which is the introduction of the nature of the mind, is the entry door of the achievement practices, as you said, Damien. And these practices are meant to just be a support of our view of the reality of the great perfection, which means that they are skillful means, and it's the word we use, to just being able to remain directly on the perception of the primordial ground of the reality, on the primordial nature of the mind. So as they are skillful means, they will disappear along the path. It means that the more we progress up to the result, and the more we just forget about the formal way we practice, the formal expression of the practice, and so on and so on. And then in the end, we just reach the base, the preliminary practices achieved. And this is exactly the path of the great perfection. That's it.
So for a beginner, is it better to make lots of effort for the preliminaries?
Yes.
It's clear.
No choice. And the main problem is not putting on effort. And there is no problem with that. In fact, as we start with what we know and what we know to do, actually in the beginning we struggle usually because we struggle in our daily life. It's the way we work. And for us, making efforts is usually connected to struggling. But for the great perfection, actually, making effort to practice is not struggling. We have an image, a traditional image, is whenever we just sit down, to practice, then it's like meeting a really old friend. We are really happy to meet again. And, it's just like recognizing directly something that is wonderfully amazing. And this is the way, actually, to practice the preliminary practices. But struggling, it's just because we have the habit in our world to just determine the effort as something that is painful. And it's not the view of the great perfection, actually, not at all.
Thank you, Milaken Rinpoche. So there is a good news. We can walk the path and reach our own nature. And for this, it seems to be a little bit complex. There is preliminaries practices, main practices, a lot of practices. Do we need to be guided on the path, or can we do it alone? Damien Bron, do you have an idea?
Yes, I have. Yes, it won't be enough to read a book called Dzogchen for Dummies or ABC Dzogchen.
You still have to write it, huh?
Yes, that will be a good idea. Because what is transmitted is a direct perception, something connected directly at the first person based approach to reality. It can be something you self-taught, self-learn by reading books. It has to be transmitted by someone who has this kind of realization. There is no other way. Yeah, so you need to find someone who is qualified by that realization. He or she will be able to guide you to this, because that's the essence of the path. Of course, before we just described the different steps and aspects of the path, but there is only one thing, which is to discover, to unveil this nature by your direct perception. In a sense, that's also very simple. And this simplicity is coming by meeting someone who can show you that directly.
So we have to find a master or a teacher.
Yes, that's a very important part of the path. And it takes some time, some reflection to do that in a meaningful way.
Thank you, Damien Bron.
Thank you.
Mila Kinsey, Erin Poche.
Actually, we need a guide. You know, for all the paths in the world, we need a guide, we need a map, we need something that can just tell us, oh, you have to reach that point, and this is the way to reach that point. So you need a guide. This guide will give you instructions for the path to walk on to be able to reach the result. So this is the basics of the path. And the guide, as Damien said, the guide gives you also the opportunity to recognize the true nature of your mind, the real primordial nature of your mind. So this is possible because there is lineages that just protect, we can say that, protect and give to the next generations the means to recognize and reach this pure primordial nature of the mind. And this is the most crucial, in fact, because if you have broken lineages, or if you have just only books, as you said, Damien, then you cannot receive this introduction of the nature of your own mind. And then it's like, you know, you are blind to it, and what you think you will reach, you won't reach, because it's not the true nature of the mind. It's your idea, it's your definition, it's your illusory perception, but it's not the real one, because nobody shown you what it is. And this is why the guide, a qualified guide, which can be a woman, a man, even, you know, in the text we say it can be also something else, like a bridge, for example, or a rainbow in the sky. They can be qualified even if we do not know this qualification, but we need a doorway to enter the primordial nature of the mind. And this is the guide. This is the guide we need to do that.
Thank you, Mila Kinsey, Erin Poche. Thank you, Damien Bron.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for the invitation.
It was a pleasure to have you today.
Oh yeah, it was a great pleasure to be here.
And next time we will talk about the fruition. So if you want to learn more about it, stay tuned.
You can find more episodes on your website, dzogchentoday.org. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review us on your favorite podcast app and share it with your friends. We will be pleased to receive your feedbacks on podcast@dzogchentoday.org.